Hey, Jim, DDA said we should start this earlier for you East Coast folks, and I said it's no different than Monday Night Football.
No, you're right. But it's funny because when I threw it out there, like to do this, I didn't think about the time difference. And I'm thinking, oh, it's a work night, 9 o'clock. But hey, we're out till 11 o'clock anyway.
You should have opened this with like that.
I know.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to ToutSuite. Another beautiful day here in Napa Valley. Tonight, my very, 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 very good friend Juan Mercado from Realm Cellars had the great idea of coming up and visit, bringing his new release, the 2011 blended wine. This is a very important time of the year for him because this is harvest. I really thank you for coming. We're going to have a live audience that's coming up. Most of the people are still walking to the vineyards. We do have also some friends that join us from Buffalo, New York. And I'd like to welcome Jim Kursiak and friends. Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. And thank you very much for joining us. How's everything?
Great.
Great. Wonderful.
We're here at the Realm Cellars tasting room in Buffalo, New York. So we have a lot of great friends. Just going to have a great evening tonight.
Well, Jim, like a little background, I never met you, and I'm a very good friend of Juan, and I understand Juan told me that you were a very, good friend as well. How you guys met?
It's funny because I met through an alumni magazine. Juan's partner, Wendell, is an alumni of the same college I went to, and which is near the Finger Lakes in New York. And I reached out to him because my wife and I were traveling out to Napa, and he basically asked, he said, here, contact Juan, and you can try our wine. And that's how I met Juan and developed a friendship with Juan. So it's been probably 8 years now.
Oh, that's fantastic.
No, it's been a while. So, no, it's great. And they usually stay in Yountville, so it's like I run into them.
Oh,
they come out, I know, imagine that. No, you guys come out at least, it seems like twice a year? Once or twice?
Yeah, about at least once, if not twice a year. Yes.
Yeah.
So you've been very great. Invited us to your premiere Napa party, which we've always enjoyed, and it's we've always enjoyed coming out and visiting with Juan.
No, they've always come out to the epicenter tasting, and so you guys are probably met, just didn't know.
Late in the day, and then everything gets fuzzy, around 5 o'clock. After this wine, you test, during the course of the day, and this is a pretty big weekend, isn't it? The premier Napa Valley.
Let me translate. Let me translate. During premiere, you're pretty much inebriated the entire time that you're going around from tasting to tasting. So that's why he doesn't remember. No.
Okay. So Jim and your friends, I really want you to be part of this conversation here, and absolutely feel free to jump in. And I'm going to just start it up. I know Juan for a long, long time. I'm not gonna go back into that. Everything you can come up to the tasting room and visit, and we tell you, everything you need to know about it. However, we are 2013, and you started the winery. The first vintage was 2012.
2002.
2002. Sorry, yeah. So it's been 10 years.
10 years.
And tell us a little bit what happened during the course of those 10 years, where, from where you were before and where you are now. Some what you have learned, what you learned about you, and some of the hardest, challenging episodes.
Yeah, well, it's great to be here because DDA, I've always, I don't want your head to get any bigger, but he's always been a mentor of mine. I was buying wines from DDA back about 15 years ago, and we connected at a Wine Spectator wine tasting in San Francisco, and ever since then, we became really good friends. This would have been probably 97 or so, and so moved up here to the Napa Valley. He was the one person that I knew up here, and he's the one that introduced me to another dear friend of ours, Pax Cellars, and from there, it just kind of, I just felt like I was part of the community immediately. And in a lot of ways, if it weren't for Didier, I wouldn't have the connections. I wouldn't have met Fred Schrader. I wouldn't definitely, I would still be in the wine business, but I'm sure I would have taken a different route. But that would have been, in 2002, it's the first time that I finally got a yes from a grower, and that was Andy Beckstoffer. And I had done some part-time work with Pax and at Livingston Moffett. And right. Yeah, I was able, I learned John Kongsgaard was at Livingston Moffett at the time. Pax was starting Pax Wine Cellars at the time. I was also doing some work for Fred, and things just kind of took off from there. The entire time I still had my day job, which was working at the hospital.
That's a night job.
Or night job, yes, I should say. In Oakland, so I was kind of balancing. It was a balancing act between, wine business during the day, hospital at night, and in 2002 I was finally able to get some fruit, and it was through Andy Beckstoffer at the Toquelin Vineyard, and this is when it was just finally. At the time, you had Paul Hobbs, Tor, Schrader making the Toquelin wines, and so at that point it was. Kind of a rapid fire learning on the job, barrel selection, and we brought on Mike Kirby as our winemaker, and he was very instrumental in helping me out and getting Realm going, and it just kind of took off from there. And 10 years later, I still can't believe, I still feel like I'm learning every day, and it's 10 years later, and here we are with the 2012 vintage. We just tasted with Antonio Galloni earlier today, and it's as a wine, first and foremost, I'm still a wine consumer, and that's the thrill, and that's why I got into the wine business, is to be able to sit down with our winemaker, now Benoit Touquette, with my partner, Scott Becker, Antonio Galloni across from us. And I mean, that's what makes wine fun. And you never know, what every day's different.
Is it fun or humbling?
Both. It's both.
You've been nice to him, right?
Well, of course, but
are you trying to study? Is it physical moves, and the ways if he make a little, just so you wonder what it is?
No, not at all. Not at all. I've learned not to try to read, especially when you're tasting with whoever the wine critic or publication is. I've learned every time that I've tried to guess what they were going to do, it's been completely wrong. So I've learned, you know what, it is what it is. Luckily for us, we've always done well, and that's all I go by. Yeah. But So it's one of those things where we'll know soon, and hopefully keep our fingers crossed. We'll do okay. So
that's great. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and Jim, hopefully you're drinking the same wine we're drinking, but we decided to pour the 2011 Tempest into a glass, and then we're going to move along with the Falstaff, and then the Barb. So the Tempest is the blend of Merlot, the variation of Pomerol, so to speak, with about 75% Merlot, 20% of Cabernet Sauvignon, and 5% of Petit Verdot, different vineyards. And how was the 2011 Tempest for you? With a Merlot, being so much of a Merlot based on the two wine.
Well, the Tempest is a wine we've always made since the very beginning, since 2002. We were very lucky to get some Napa fruit back then, and so we made it since 2002. And 11 was definitely the most challenging year in the 10 years that we had been making wines. When I asked growers, some of the very best growers like Andy Beckstoffer, you can ask anyone, 2011 is probably the most difficult year in the last 50 years. And this was Benoit's first year from start to finish. But this is our current release, and it really, after bottling it, and the vintage as a whole was, from our part, production is way down, but quality-wise, what we did bottle, I'm really excited about it. It really reaffirmed why we have Benoit as our winemaker. and he should be walking in any minute, but just pretend he's here. It's in the middle of harvest, and we just started. Actually, our first fruit came in yesterday, Dr. Crane, and so we're kind of in the middle of that. But it's with 11s. I mean, it was cold, it was wet, it was. There was. I don't want. When you think about it, it's a very difficult vintage. Yeah. But wine, the wines are the very best. Even our worst years in Napa Valley, we're not talking about other regions of the world. Yeah. They're still not that. You can still produce great wine. You just have to be selective with the blocks that you use, and you might not be happy with the quantity, which is as a vintner, that's my problem with the production, the quantity, but quality-wise, it's, we're really happy with them.
Yeah, I mean, that was definitely a year where, and I remember here in Napa Valley, for instance, that was a year where we didn't have any summer. I mean, that was overcast pretty much every day, and it rained when it wasn't supposed to rain, and it frost when it was supposed to frost. It spiked when we didn't supposed to have a spike, and that was like challenging. That was really a year of guessing for a lot of people. And I think that, people that, as far as winemakers, that was, to me, that was a vintage that was really made, inside the vineyards, inside the wine cellars, because, people really hand to get, whatever fruit, was coming up. And so that was, to me, that was like a really, the winemakers deserve the money finally. I mean, sometimes, California is great, but so the wine is, how many cases of this you made?
We made I think it's about 300, 310, I think, cases.
Okay.
Total.
Jim, so you're tasting that a little bit, and what are your thoughts as a group?
What are our thoughts?
I think it's got a delicious, nice long finish. I love the finish on it.
You can really taste the caramel on the finish.
Caramel. We're hearing caramel.
Caramel. So this is the more like a referring of the use of oak. The use of oak, yeah. And can you talk a bit about what you're using?
Yeah, it's 100% new French oak, and it's primarily d'Arnajoux and Terroirs is what we use for this wine. It's a very young wine. This was bottled in July. So at this, you're still, in some cases, in some of the wines, you're still going to get some of that oak component. But over time, that should integrate well, and you won't get as much of it. And it's not necessarily a negative, but the caramel is a component that you get from the oak itself. I personally like a little bit of it, and but yeah, that's just an oak component.
So we're going to kind of finish. Go ahead.
From year to year, tonight we're tasting the blends. So can you talk a little bit about, from year to year, are you trying to hit, is Tempest trying to be consistent from year to year in how you blend the different grapes into it to have a similar taste profile every year?
Well, we make the 3 vineyard designates and we make the 3 blends. And they're basically 2 different focuses. The vineyard designates are about a sense of place, and those need to be consistent. The blends, each one has its own focus. The Tempest is always Merlot based. The Falstaff is always Cabernet Franc based. The Bard is Cabernet Sauvignon based. We're trying to make the best wine we can. So the Merlot might be, for example, from a certain vineyard. And if after 5 or 6 years we're able to acquire a better vineyard after experimenting with it for 2 or 3 years, then we might ultimately move from one site to another site if it makes a better wine. And over time, you're going to have some vintage variation and some, not only vintage variation, but also some changes because of the vineyard sites. But ultimately, the goal is to make the best wine, and a wine that you can not only enjoy today, but that will age longer. So, but you're looking at 2 components: vintage variation and ultimately vineyard. And at some point, hopefully, we'll have, we've talked about it with my business partners, is having an estate, and we'll always buy the vineyards like To Kalon, like Dr. Crane, like Farella, but that will also bring a little bit more perhaps consistency in terms of what our consumer, can expect. But, as our model has always been, we don't own any vineyards. So sometimes we find a better vineyard and we move on, and sometimes the vineyard might be sold. So it forces us in a position where we have to find a different site.
So,
go ahead.
What would you pair this with in terms of food? What would be an ideal food pairing?
What would be an ideal food pairing for this? Well, the Tempest for me tends to have, in most years, once wines evolve in bottle, but in most years it tends to be perhaps the least structured of our wines, the most approachable. And although in 2011 the wine definitely requires a little bit more decanting than perhaps other vintages have, but I would, obviously with meats, you can poultry, chicken, duck, and obviously the heavier meats. I think this has a little bit more flexibility, even with some heavy fish compared to, let's say, Tocolon, which is much more structured, and a tannic wine that would be more of that red meat type of component. But rabbit would be really good. Yeah. Speaking of rabbit.
Speaking of rabbits, yeah.
It's another story.
Yeah. So this is like, so Jim, you met Juan, in the mid 2000, the cine of 2000, and what was the first vintage that you eventually purchased?
2004. So I still have a bottle or two of the 2004 in the basement. So that's what I.
So you were like pretty much right at the beginning, right?
Yes.
2002, 2003.
I was fortunate enough to start off pretty much close to the beginning.
Yeah, and that's a little bit like something that very rare, are people that have the 2003 vintage. Or is there like anybody has a 2003 vintage that you know?
There's very few. I think so. For those that don't know, the 2002 was our first vintage. We produced about 300 or so cases. In 2003, we were fortunate enough to, we were offered some really, really great fruit. And so the plan was to produce about 1,000 cases worth of wine. And unfortunately, we lost, after we bottled it, we lost that in the arson fire on Mare Island.
So, it's just because I want to go like a little bit deeper into that. I think I have to,
I'm trying to forget it.
Yeah, I feel I have to give it some direction here, because I'm sure Jim might be very interested. So we are here the 14th of October, 2005, and you receive a phone call. Oh, how do you knew about it?
Well, no, I was picking up some bins up at Sherwin Family because we were in the middle of harvest, and we were getting ready we had a pick. And so I was getting ready to drop off. I was picking up some bins up at the winery, and I was going to drop them off at this point it would have been Tocolon. And I got a call saying that I got a text from a couple of people and a call saying that there's this fire at this wine storage facility on Mare Island, and do you have your wines there? Or I heard you had your wines there. And immediately I just almost kind of blocked it out, because I thought, no, this can't be happening.
Because I never knew the story, how this thing, how it being revealed to you.
No, it was just, I got a call, several calls actually, but I knew, it was one of those things where I knew it was, when you're getting, it's kind of like, I remember one time there was an accident in the family with a family member, and I woke up to 25 missed calls, and I knew that that's not a good sign. And so when you have multiple texts coming to your phone saying something about a fire and you're getting calls, it's not good. And at that point, I couldn't do anything about it. You're already in the midst of harvest. It's just crazy and chaotic, that I thought, let me just pick up these bins I'll get to the bottom of the hill, and then I'll start making
So
some calls.
you were that cool? I mean, me, I would be like, it's just.
No, I was
Jesus
just.
Christ.
I was.
You know what I'm saying? It's just like, all my 2003 vintage that is supposed to be shipped to the customers, to the supporters, within the next couple of weeks, is burning down.
Well, the site, the building itself was a 7-acre site. I mean, that's how large the building is. It's a huge building.
Yeah.
And so a lot of it depends, I'm hoping for the best in that the fires in one part of the building and that our stuff would be okay. Yeah. Which obviously later that day, I realized I actually dropped off the bench, drove straight to the facility to see, and the fire was going on. And it was just, I realized, you know what? We're in a lot of trouble. Yeah. A lot of trouble. So a lot of sleepless nights, let's just say.
I mean, I remember when you called me and I went with you and visit the place.
That's right.
I mean, you were walking in inches, and just to re-emphasize on the priority of that, of glass. I mean, that was like, that was millions and millions of bottles were broken, I'm sure there was some wineries that were pretty happy with this. Because, that was, a massive thing. But, I mean, for a startup company, winery, with the second vintage coming up, and I would have think it would have been devastating.
Well, no, it definitely was devastating. Yeah, and it's something that it kind of scars you, but I didn't have a choice. You can either just stop it.
Did you cry?
Probably. I'm sure I cried many nights going to bed. Yeah. But the reality is, you just have to. My option was either I can give up and move on and go back to the hospital, or just continue. And I was naive enough at the time, thank goodness, that I just thought, you know what, I can still do this. And
Jim, did you know that, Jim?
I didn't know all that. It was something that I've mentioned to a couple of times, only because I just think that the story itself, now that, he survived it. And not only has he survived it, but he is, just blown it through the roof. But just, as a fellow business owner, how do you talk about that? If you couldn't sell any of your wares for a whole year until the next season, how do you get through that? And I just think it's an incredible story for you to tell.
Yeah, we were very lucky in that at the time, I had met a lot of our customers, friends, people that were on our list. And if it weren't for them, we would have never made it. I mean, we could have, they were the support. As much as I wish insurance covered it, that definitely wasn't the case. But everyone, kind of from growers to consumers to you name it, everyone was so supportive that really helped. And that's what, again, a lot of sleepless nights. I don't talk about it much because it's not, it wasn't obviously it's all businesses go through their ups and downs, as you would know. And this is just one, there's so many, and when you're talking about farming, you've got really bad vintages. Some farmers might not even have a crop sometimes. And so it happens to all businesses. And I just viewed it as, as bad as it was, I just viewed it as other people have gone through worse things, through health, personal stuff, that, it's like, for me, it's like, it could be worse. It's already bad, but it could be worse. And what am I going to do? I'm going to move on.
Well, I mean, I'd like to jump into that, but, that wasn't like, those 10 years were like, really, very challenging, not just the one, the one aspect of it, but also you have to have everything around you that was like, and the way you survived. But what is even more to me interesting is like, those guys, they're like, startup. So the first vintage was 2002, and then 2003, this thing happened, the first vintage, and people still, were able to back you up. The growers believed on you. The consumers believed on you. So that was really interesting. That to have this community, so to speak, to rally around this new brands. So I think it's really fascinating. I mean, this is like a story. I don't care. I mean, I've been in Napa Valley for a bit now, and I haven't heard a story like that. I mean, this is very unique, and glad to know you, because I mean that's great. I mean, what you did is fantastic. I tell you, man. So tell me about so for you, what would be the perfect wine? What is a perfect wine?
The perfect wine is that great bottle of wine where there's a great story behind it, and that for me is the perfect. There's so much great wine out there.
Yeah.
I mean, and for me, it's the story. We were talking.
Let's set it up and then let's move to the other one.
All right,
We're pouring the next one already.
Yeah, we're pouring the next one. The Falstaff.
Okay.
So DDA doesn't believe in dump buckets. So
yes,
he's a friend.
You worked so hard to make this
Yes.
nectar, and watch you dump it.
We're not doing dump buckets here either. We've got 3 sets of glasses for everybody.
That's great. Well, we do one set. Yeah, because I'm the one washing the glasses. I know that better.
So the Falstaff is Cabernet Franc based. But so this is also kind of a right bank blend, but it's always Cab Franc based, and we made about 220 or so cases of it.
So 220. So 220 people in the world can have a case of this thing. That's pretty cool, And what is the blend and the vineyards?
The vineyard for the 2011 is you're looking at. There's a little Petit Verdot from Dr. Crane. The Cabernet Franc comes primarily from a vineyard called Engelhard on Diamond Mountain. And the Cabernet Sauvignon would be Blair Vineyard in Calistoga.
The Blair Vineyard?
Yeah, Calistoga. So, but it's, again, 100% new French oak, made exactly the same like the Tempest, which is Merlot-based, but the differences are the varietal characteristics. Definitely cooler climate.
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of the Cabernet Franc, but you get that body and weight from the Blair Vineyard, which is Calistoga next to Larkmead, and Three Palms, and then you have the Petit Verdot from Dr. Crane, which is Dr. Crane.
Yeah. So let's go back to the 100 point, the perfect wine. I don't know if you can put a number onto that, but is 100 point from Parker Galloni the one spectator that is a perfect wine in your opinion?
Well, we've done tastings where you do what we call like 100-point tastings, where you line up 10, 5, 10, 100-point wines. And the reality is you can rank them from your favorite to least favorite. It has nothing to do with quality. Yeah. They're all great wines. For me, it's typically stylistic decisions, which way that producer decided to go. For me, the wines that I remember it's the story, who you're with, who you enjoy. I still talk about Benoit and I having 59 Chateau Latour in a tumbler at a Mexican food restaurant in Hollywood, because that's all we had were tumblers.
That's decadent.
But what was it?
That's decadent.
Yes, but it was fantastic, even under that circumstance, and that just adds to it. I remember the wines that we had at Domaine Chandon for dinner with Pax and John Gretz.
Uh-huh.
And we had you introduced me to 95 Harlan. We had the 96 Noon Eclipse. We had, you probably remember. John, we had Kongsgaard Shard.
Man, we're young and stupid by then, man. We're going to a restaurant for like a couple of cases of wine for 6 of us. Just clean the cases like in one sitting.
Yeah.
I mean, that was crazy.
But for me, that's the perfect wine. It's the one that, wine's about sharing, and it brings people together, and that's what adds to that experience. You could have you could have a bottle of your favorite wine in the world, but imagine drinking it by yourself. It's just not, for me, that doesn't.
So eventually, for Realm, could it be like could it be that the perfect bottle of wine could be a Tempest that you may have with Jim? And have like you guys are coming up and like hanging out and that bottle of wine, right there, that moment is so special. The conversation is so great. The planets are like,
Well, you definitely need that. I mean, you can have, if the planets are aligned and everything is, you're having a wonderful night, wonderful glass of wine, that's fantastic. That's what you add. And that's what you're going to remember that wine, whether it's $20 bottle of wine or a $1,000 bottle of wine. That's what you're going to remember. That's the way for me, the given is the wine has to be great, but just because it's a great wine doesn't necessarily mean you're going to remember that moment unless it's a special moment. And that's what adds to it. I mean, that's the way I remember things. I remember who I was with, what I'm drinking, who I'm enjoying it with, what kind of interactions we're having. And that's what makes it special.
How about you, Jim?
I can tell you, I don't mean to interrupt, but based on the sounds that I'm hearing behind me, I'm hearing a lot of oohs and ahs, and I'm getting this is a special bottle of wine, and we're really enjoying it.
This one is not available, by the way. I'm just saying.
Jim, what is for you what is for you, like, as a consumer, the perfect a bottle of wine? Is there a number, or this is just a bottle that you share and it doesn't matter? It may have been like an 82 point from a critic, but as long as you have the company, what is really the most important things for you?
I think a lot of it is the story, why you liked it. Coming out to Napa, Juan has allowed me to do some things in his cellar that I've never done before, trying different wines in barrels with different toastings. Now, to you guys in Napa, that's an everyday occurrence. But
I don't even do that.
For people traveling into there, it's different. So, finding a bottle of wine that you really like when you're out there and bringing it home and opening it with friends and sharing why you like it, I think that's a big part of it.
So this is as close as you can be from the perfect bottle of wine. What has been your favorite ever bottle of wine? And it doesn't have to be Realm, I mean, like, just. The one who brought tears to your eyes.
The bottle of wine that got me into, that really hit me was my sister was living out in San Francisco and came home for Christmas, knew that Kath and I had just started getting into wine, and she gave us a bottle. It was a 1994 Trefethen Cabernet. And
what year?
94.
Great, yeah.
And for some reason, it just hit us the right way. And I remember my dad was going out to visit her. I wrote it down and said, "See if you can get more." And my dad said when they walked in, they laughed at him. So.
Wow.
But
that's awesome.
That,
Or 94.
Right, more than 94.
And they wanted to buy it back.
Yeah. But that was the bottle that really solidified us as becoming, wine drinkers.
So what do you guys feel about the Falstaff?
I love it. It's very soft. It's going really well with the cheeses that we're serving.
If you have to compare this particular one with the previous vintage, since Jim, you've been on the mailing list, and seems to be like the Realm is the Budweiser of the house. What the difference on the 2010, 2011, 2009, 2011? How you in your opinion, how you see this vintage?
Well, just from the things that I heard were that the 2011 vintage was a difficult year, but I got to tell you, this has so much flavor, this wine. This is delicious.
You have to work hard on the alcohol level on this. I see it's 14% alcohol, and I really don't, it doesn't have a high alcohol taste to it. It's not hot at all. I mean, did you have to work hard to achieve the alcohol level you wanted in this?
In general, the 2011s, Yes, most of ours are, these are all in that probably 14 and a half range. But had we tried to get up to 15, 15 and a half, it wasn't going to happen anyway. Whereas in other years, it's definitely not an issue. So we got the ripening that we wanted, but in general, the 11s are much lower alcohols than they typically have been. So definitely. And these are both in that, like I said, 14 and a half range or so, which is the lowest. We're typically hovering between 14 and a half and 15. And, but there were, a lot of people struggled in 11 with getting the ripeness that they want. And for us, that was the biggest concern, is making sure that the wines were ripe. We weren't worried about getting brix levels up. It was just more about getting that density, that richness, that length of flavor, and ripe flavors, ripe tannin. And because if you don't have that raw material, it's the mouthfeel of that wine is just not gonna, that's kind of what we're known for, that palate impression. And that for me was the biggest concern, but we were able to hang it out there and get to where we wanted to. I don't mind if the wines are 13% or 15%, but it's all about having that length, the density, that richness, the right flavors. And if you get that, whatever the alcohol comes out, it's not a problem. We had several blocks in vineyards that never even made the cut, that were immediately bulked off because of that reason. Luckily for us, that's the one advantage about not owning your vineyards, is that we've got vineyards from Coonsfield to as far north to Calistoga and everything in between. So if something just doesn't ripen or we're having issues with it, we're not tied to that. And that's, unfortunately for us, that's the one advantage to it, is that because of that, we've got the diversity, we've got a lot of flexibility, we have a lot of spices in the spice rack.
Juan, with all the different vineyards you have, do you buy the grapes that you're buying? Are you buying them based on the size of the area that or is it based on tonnage?
We want to manage. Our thing is about micromanaging every lot that we get grapes from. So we want to make sure that we control all the farming. We don't have to do the work, but the grower does it. But the idea is to.
Oh, it's about time.
Oh, look who came. Benoit, the winemaker is here. He's notorious. Well, he's only 10 minutes late. Usually he shows up at 6:30 for these shows.
It's 6:40. It's like 40 minutes late. Yes.
Well, Ruiz said he's 3 hours and 40 minutes late.
Talking about the vineyard here, Juan, and from the way you decided to pick the vineyard like 10 years ago to what is your criteria for picking the vineyard? Have they changed, or what is from 2002 to 2013 now? Are you looking still for the same type of vineyards? Most of the time that was on the valley floor. Are you any hillside fruits coming up, or what?
Yeah, no, we definitely have. We're always looking at just as a consumer, as just a curiosity. You always want to try new things, experiment, and so we're always looking, and we do have some new sources in 2013. We have the White's Vineyard, thanks to Benoit, up on the eastern slopes of Oakville, so right next to Dalla Valle, right above Rudd. It's just a great area. Peter Michael has a new vineyard up there, which we're excited about. Obviously, Thomas is making Maybach up there, and it's fantastic. One of my favorites. And we also we have a vineyard up on Pritchard Hill. So we're always looking to what's the newest, the latest, newest plantings. That's just a part of. If you're a wine geek, that's what you're into, and that for me, that's a big part of it.
So how the relation works between you two? Not only you have friends, you used to be roommates. They used to be roommates, they're friends, and they work together. And one is kind of leading the other one. And so one is kind of signing the checks, right? So how does it work? In a way, you know,
who's on top, who's on bottom?
It's like, you know, you have a vision. Your vision was to really showcase some of the best terroirs of Napa Valley and things like that. You find something, you talk to Benoit.
Yeah.
Is that okay for Benoit to say this thing stinks and I don't want to touch it?
No.
Or
no, we were always the thing is we were always, as roommates, we always respected one another in terms of what we did, and we always wanted to, you know, it was no different than I would come in and say, hey, this is what Mike and I just blended. Check this out. What do you think? You know, Benoit would come in. It's like, hey, what do you think of the latest Hartwell? This is what we put together. This is what I'm thinking. And we always wanted each other's feedback. And so this is no different. I might come in and say to Benoit, I might come in and say, hey, have you heard of this vineyard? This looks like, I think this is what's available. And what are your thoughts on it? And vice versa. He might say, like, you think you might be looking, you know, as Realm, are you looking for this or that? And it's always evolving.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it. It's not about, you know, especially like this year, we went from no mountainsides to 2 mountainsides. We have Pritchard Hill and up on the eastern side of Oakville, and one of them is Benoit, one of them is me. And it's all about making what makes the best for Realm, and that's the idea behind it.
So, listen, you guys are going to jump in anytime you're on something. You know, I'm just trying to keep going here. But you know.
Okay, so I have a question for Juan then. I remember talking to you early on, and I don't remember exactly, but you explained to me that when you first created your label, you had a vision for the wine and the style that you wanted. So now we're at 2012 vintage. Has that vision changed at all?
The vision hasn't changed, but the way we do it has. You know, now we have a team in place where we have, you know, it starts with Benoit, we have Michel Rolland, we have, you know, full-time assistant winemaker, we have a full-time cellar master, and those are things that we didn't have in the past. And so it's just like when you're first starting, you're bootstrapping everything, and it worked for a long time, and luckily it's just, you know, things have changed, and we're in a position now where we have a consulting viticulturist, and it's those kind of things that, you know, it all starts in the vineyard, and with better fruit, it's a lot easier to get your vision across. We're not, first and foremost, you know, the one thing that I knew, and, you know, Benoit, one of the first things Benoit said when he came on as a winemaker is that, you know, what is it that the Realm consumer wants, you know, and and that was first and foremost, because I've always said it's kind of like a restaurant. You can't have your food, every time your chef changes, you can't have your food change, because if it does, you may as well start all over. And one of the things that when we went with Benoit, we knew that we had someone that would respect what we had done in the past, and that was very, very important. And we've always, you know, with the history of us being, you know, we were roommates for a long time, we kind of learned each other's style, and I knew that we had very similar views about wine in general, whether it was Chenin Blanc from the Loire, or whether it was Chateauneuf, or whether it was a German Riesling, whatever. We had very similar outlooks on wine, and so it just seemed like a fairly easy transition.
Susan. Yeah, I mean, that was a great question. I mean, I appreciate that. So things is cool. You know, things are cool. And you did the 2011 vintage.
Yeah.
you being French and being like, I'm sorry to say that, but I think, I think there is a reason why I'm saying that. Because you grew up and decided to make wine in a country that is less forgiving than California, and then you traveled. How difficult was 2011 vintage year for you? Is that something that you may have seen in other countries? Was it a little bit easier for you to react to what, the mother nature threw you like during the course of the year? Were you like a little bit more, aware of what, some of the decisions that you will have to take in the future? Take us a bit about the 11 vintage.
So I think 11 was a very technical year in the sense that usually you're in a good condition like 07, like 2004, 2003. Big difference with 2011. You start to have some rain very early on, so prone to get the stress that you want, to get the smaller berries that you like. Also, very early on, we assess, you have to make decision. We keep the cover crop, we remove the cover crop, what kind of pruning we're going to do, irrigation pattern. We need to jump in all of that like right away to get to the end of the season in a better position. So for us, the advantage was we have been doing viticulture. We have Michel also that helps. So right away, you can recognize the pattern, adapt yourself, and try to be ready when it's harvest time. So we kind of knew where we were going, like when it was harvest time. Juan's brother.
Orale.
¿Cómo estás? We see my brother.
So it was, I think after that, like Juan and I, like we talk about it, like put the game plan together, and then we decide to be aggressive, to be selective, and try to push things as far as we can, as we could.
When at what point of the year did you decide to be a selective, to put the plan together, to be selective and to be aggressive? Are we talking like a before variation or after variation?
No, very early on. It was like we asked the guy, keep cover crop if you can, open the canopy, like to be more aggressive on the opening of the canopy. So all the vine management, basically. We start to push dry farm. We engage people to dry farm, not to put water. There was a big rain in May and June, so we don't need water at that point. Then it was like canopy management and try to push on the season.
Okay, I understand. Yeah, because we don't want to be like too technical because I'm sure like a lot of people are watching us and don't know anything about the canopy management and the variation. In 2 words, what is variation?
So it's when the berry like turn color. When they go from green to purple.
Okay. So this is a very important time of the year because then after that, you have like, a couple of months, until pretty much harvest. This is,
Yeah.
So, voilà. And then after that, canopy management, what does that mean?
It's basically the decision you make to remove leaves, to yes or no, to open on both sides, to open on one side, to open on the inside.
For airflow, for sun to
airflow, sun, like everything.
So, but I'll just kind of simplify it. So, translate. I'll try to say. So, 11 being a very challenging year, that was Benoit's first year with us from start to finish, and Benoit came in and basically had to kind of really work with the growers and make sure that certain things were done in the vineyard in order to get the best fruit possible. And so that's one of the reasons I think we were able to get the fruit and ultimately the wine that you're tasting, the 2011s. If it weren't, because of, Benoit's he's got a great viticulture background. He's extremely aggressive. And in most years in California, it doesn't matter. You have great fruit, but in a year like 2011, keep in mind Benoit's from Bordeaux, where they've got the weather's, it's just a harsher environment to grow grapes, and that's his background. So he's used to a lot of the issues that we saw in 11. So when a lot of people were panicking in 11, Benoit was
as cool as it just out of the pillow.
As cool as other side.
As bold as you could be.
As bold.
So let's talk about we want to welcome Juan's brother. We still have about 7-8 minutes left, and I definitely want to acknowledge Juan's brother, join us. Hey, how you feel like, about are you the elder
youngest.
or the youngest, or
He's my baby brother.
is that right?
Yeah.
How you feel about, like, big brother?
He's a rabbit.
Yeah.
Do you have audio, Jerry? No, I don't think.
So,
Try the Spanish
okay,
one.
maybe
Try
not.
the Spanish. Try the
yeah,
Spanish
yeah.
one.
Orale. No?
¿Qué se pasó, amigo?
No, he
So, all
doesn't.
right. So
He
let's
can't hear.
let's talk about the 2011 Barb, and then we're gonna almost say goodbye. But Jim, we're gonna stay in touch, live. But let's talk about the 11 vintage, the Barb. So the Barb challenges. That's all Valley Floor.
We have the bard?
The Barb, yeah.
You drinking the ball?
The
We're
Barb.
getting the bard.
11? You have it too?
Yeah,
That's
we
great.
sent it all to
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, so I mean, like, decision
I have
was...
Brian, my cellar master. He's divvying up the wine for us.
Back
He's
to
pouring.
the Falstaff, when do you think that will be drinking at its peak?
Is that a question for Benoit or for Juan?
Because we won't have the same answer.
No, go ahead, Benny. You just got here. So.
I think in 11, I mean, the wine could be ready like sooner than, for example, 12, which is more loads in tannins. So I would guess like it's gonna beneficiate for another like good year in bottle. I think that will help. And after that, it depends if you decant yes or no, but I will start to look at it earlier than some other like vintages.
In other words, drink up in the next 5 years, right?
There you go.
I think it's very delicious now. I think like, opening the wine a little bit ahead of time, would definitely help. But, it's funny for all the wines that we tasted tonight, there is this core of sweet fruit.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. It's like a very good concentration. I mean, this is a nice wine. I mean,
We're sweet people.
yeah, man, mais we love. I gotta tell, so,
I think the wine is, it's already soft. It's not like you have to wait too much for the tannins to resolve. So, and if you like the fresh fruit, like better early than late for the freshness of the fruit. So, we're lucky to be in California to have that kind of first primary, very exuberant fruit.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we talked about other wines. Jim, you stay online. You're not going anywhere. But for people watching, and Jerry, also,
thank you.
You stay here. Don't go anywhere. This is more for the people watching, on the live stream on the website. We're gonna say thank you tonight. That was great. This is a 2011. We've been testing a 2011 release, the Tempest, the Falstaff, and the Barb, 2011, very nice. The wines are just being released, available on the website. It's
realmcellars.com.
realmcellars.com. You can come, if you come to Napa Valley, give us a shot, or give Juan a shot, or Benoit. They're open 7 days a week. Even on Sunday, if you're lost somewhere, you have nothing to do, you want to have some great wine,
And we deliver.
they will show you some good time. What else I have to say? Oh, Monday night we are receiving a Pax Cellars with a Crocker and Star. It's going to be a good one too. She's a cool woman.
Great
and
Cap Franc.
yeah, very, very nice Cap Franc. The one were great. For everyone, thank you very much. Until next time.